The Health Fix podcast teaches you how to take charge of your health naturally by giving you the information you need to elevate your health.
Hello there, health junkies. Welcome to another episode of The Health Fix. I'm your host, Dr. Jannine Krause. Today, I have Sherry Zhang on. She is the founder and CEO of GenoPalate, a Eat for Your Genes, data-driven, personalized nutrition service helping you to optimize your health. She aims to reverse the obesity epidemic by using nutrigenomics to change how people access their food and nutrition. Sherry's message is simple. There is no one-size-fits-all way to eat, and it's to each his own. And I love this because there's way too many diets out there that folks are saying are miracles and they're going to fix your life. And a little bit later on in this podcast, we're going to talk about how keto would not work well with me, and I've experimented with it, and it went terribly wrong. And Sherry's information from GenoPalate actually helped to confirm that for me. So, Miss Sherry, say hello to the Health Fix podcast.
Hello. Hi, Jannine. What a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
No problem. I was really excited to do your genetic testing. And I think that a lot of people could benefit from this, but I love that you've got the twist in terms of studying genetics related to obesity and metabolic disorders, because I think a lot of people think of gene testing just as something cool to do. It's kind of in vogue, but you have over a decade of research that you've been doing in the genetics field related to obesity and metabolic disorders, correct?
That's correct. I studied obesity and metabolic syndrome in a very good group, one of the top scientific research group studying obesity and using DNA technologies. And later, I also developed a epigenomic technology that is as you probably know very well, that is the interplay between our genes and environment, right? The gene expression. And when you eat, when you exercise, what does that do to our genome and biology? So it's a fascinating topic, and I happily studied that for over 11 years before I decided to take my research to the public setting, which is GenoPalate today.
Wow. You know, there's a lot in terms of the epigenomic factors, and I think we'll talk about that as we get through the podcast. I really want to know, what was it about obesity and metabolic disorders? What drew you to wanting to dive so deep into the subject?
Yeah, so I have a PhD in molecular biology. Studied that in a plant system, actually, when I was at Marquette University, also, located in Milwaukee. So after that, I found this really fascinating project where will enable me to expand my study system into human, and not only just one human, it's tens of thousands of them using this statistical populational genomics approach to study something really meaningful, which is obesity epidemic, right? So I actually studied under the person, one of the gurus that shaped the Society of Obesity. His name is Dr. Ahmed Kasiba, who actually deceased now. He really coined the name of metabolic syndrome for the scientific and medicine society for us. So it's really a phenomenal experience to study that topic under one of the best intellect, of the time. And what I found is everybody has this genome you were born with, but not everybody know the genetic variants that we're born with that really differentiate. I say you and me, we have about 3 to 5 million letters differences in our genomes when we are born. And a lot of them are not necessarily drive a lot of metabolic health, but some are. So those are the genetic causality and leading to some of the epigenomic causality that we could actually decipher today to identify what is the individualized differences underlying the predisposition for central obesity, right? Fat mass versus lean mass, and dyslipidemia, hypertension, glucose, and so on and so forth. So I was studying that for a decade and published some papers using genome-wide approaches, and it was a good time.
Oh man, I mean, this is such a huge, huge topic. And I think a lot of people right now are curious about their genes, but don't fully understand the interaction between their environment, what they do, and how these genes can present or not present. Because I think, for what you have with GenoPalate, it's genius because you're showing people what to eat. What foods are going to be best for you. And I think that's what folks come to me all the time. They go, well, doc, tell me what exactly should I eat? And I'm like, well, I don't know exactly what you should eat because I can't look into your body and see your genes, but now I can, because there are other programs. Now let's talk about this for a second, because I have a lot of people who have done 23andMe. Mm-hmm. And they have their data from 23andMe. And I noticed that you also can I don't know the lingo here, but you can also give folks results based on the 23andMe testing. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, we have developed a special compatibility technology that we can take existing data platforms, data set, including 23andMe that you referred to, also Ancestry.com. Which have an even larger database, right? So there's, tens of millions of people already established with them. So we have a way to take their raw data, and we're talking about, you order it online with us, and then we send you instructions. Very easy. Take 1 minute of your time. You can find your data with your own accounts with them, and then download it and upload it through our secure portal, and then we will be able to turn that around into something you can actually use today for your eating and food choices.
That's awesome. That is so awesome. Now, I also saw that you offer some recipes as well that can be sent to folks. Let's talk about that for a second. How does that look? How many recipes can someone get? How does that work?
Yeah, I got mine recently. I just really absolutely love them. And they are, first of all, personalized to my nutritional profile based on GenoPalate's reading of my genes. So it's very, very personable and very relatable. And, it's my recipes, and I just start cooking them also because they are really handpicked and curated by our registered clinical dietitians. They really going through line by line and make sure it's agreeable to my genetic profile, not putting my at any risk for, lactose intolerant and high fat and low protein, those profiles I don't agree with. And at the same time, also be sensitive to make it palatable, make it enjoyable. And third thing is every recipes we laid out is very, very easy to do. So we want to be sensitive to busy lifestyles our customers might be having, and you'll be able to finish everything within 30 to 45 minutes. So it's a one-pager recipe per meal, and you can choose whether it's you want breakfast, lunch, snacks, or dinner, and then we tailor that to your likes, and you follow that, and then you can cook that the same day. And how does it work is you can order that after. You can only have ordering that. You can only have it when you have your profile established with our technology, obviously. So everything is personalized to your to the letters of your DNA sequence. I believe you can order either 3 or a batch of 5. And it's about $20-$30 per 3 recipes, if I'm not mistaken.
Gosh. And so you could keep doing it over and over again? And so you get unique recipes each time you ordered a batch of them?
Yeah. I mean, we haven't done more than multiple, like 2 orders. Each time would be sensitive if it's the same person. Mm-hmm. We definitely, shuffle the different choices and the different ingredients but all agreeable to that person's profile. We haven't done which in our pipeline is to help you to define your, let's say you want to have recipe books for Jannine, right? Mm-hmm. And you want to have variety and choices. And in the near future, we should be able to provide that as well.
Oh my goodness, I'll be looking forward to that. I know a lot of my patients will as well, because part of the big thing about GenoPalate that stood out in my mind was, oh my gosh, it takes the guessing out of really what jives with your body the best. And then if you have recipes, now you're taking it to a whole nother level. Folks don't have to think about, what am I going to eat? Like, I've got this list of foods, and I think a lot of people will see the list of foods and go, okay, now what? Some of us were really great in the kitchen, no big deal. But other folks, and I find this to be the majority of the population, I think will look at it and have a little bit of trepidation going, I don't know how to put this together in a recipe. So I think this is awesome. So I can't wait for you to come out with being able to get even more recipes. So yeah, great. That will be exciting. Now, Sherry, let's go into DNA testing a little bit, because I think for a lot of people, they understand that we swab the cheek, we get some saliva, and within that saliva, there's some cells. But I think beyond that, getting from your cells and then having genes that are now written out into little, letters and numbers, I think there's a lot of disconnect between what happens from cell to isolating gene to actually the data that folks see. Would you shed a little light on what testing looks like? How do you extract cells from saliva? How do you put it into machinery, and how does it work?
Sure. Yeah, my pleasure. Spent a lot of years in the lab. So I was told I'm very good at on my hands. We collect your cells into a vial which contain a stabilizing buffer, right? So if I believe you've done that with us, and so you know that it's, you need to dispense your cells into that buffer. So that will really keep it very steady and protected for, weeks if you want. And then you ship it to our lab, and our lab will receive it. One thing to protect your privacy, we de-identified it right away. So at the lab, nobody knows that's from Jannine or Sherry, right? It's a barcode which you put it in when you register with us. So that unique identifier will follow you through. Think about a journey with your biological specimen. And then you will be, the sample will be going through a pretty rigorous multi-step extraction process. And our technician will extract your cells and then break it up, and so that the DNA will be released. And then there's a way to change the chemistry so that the DNA will be purified. And then we have a really high-level standard of make sure the quality is correct and is qualified to being, we call spotted, because it's really literally a drop of, we're talking about 5 to 10 microliter using the pipette to be spotted onto a really interesting setup called microarrays. So the microarrays, think about, I believe they evolved from very big to now very, very micro size. So we're talking about probably in your thumbnail sort of a space. That's where your sample going to be spotted on. And in that small space, your nail size, we're talking about more than 1 million different specs that we have a way to identify that many reactions with biochemistry. So we can read, let's say, Jannine, at this particular, let's say, chromosome 13 of yours on this position, there's a huge number, 1,100,000, is it A or T? And if it's a T, well, I say it's a T allele, we call it, for FTO gene, which is one of the best characterized obesity genes in our study, and we'll say, okay, you are having a benign allele for craving for less energy dense food, versus me, Sherry, you have an AA allele that will, which is true. I actually have a natural, being naturally attracted to energy dense food, such as high fat food. Right. So and then there's a correlation between my allele with onset of higher BMI. So it's obesity. So those are, I hope that gives you a flavor or idea of how does that translate to something meaningful. It's a fascinating technology. We used to spend, billions of dollars on the first sequencing of the first genome, as you know. Mm-hmm. Now we're talking about for a couple $100 or even less, we can get way more sensitive, way more knowledge out of this kind of a reading. It's really a good time to be in genomics business.
Makes sense. Thanks for sharing that, because I think a lot of people, it's like magic. It shows up and you've got all these letters and numbers, and then, patients will usually bring their stuff to me, like their raw data from 23andMe, and they'll just kind of be like, here you go. Tell me what I need to do. And ultimately with 23andMe, there's tons of data points. Now with GenoPalate, you have it narrowed down to a certain amount of data points for obesity and metabolism in specifics. Now, did your 11 plus years of research kind of help you to narrow down what you were going to test, or did you kind of compile with other research in terms of what genetics were linked most to obesity and metabolism issues, or how did you do it? How did you decide what exact genes you were going to put into GenoPalate?
Yeah, great question. So a little bit both. So I definitely know the know-how. Right? I know this technology I just described about, and then I know the application of it in terms of the research and the knowledge creation for making decisions for the patients. Same time, I also published original work. Some of the genes we put out there or other peers put out there is the genes I published on, or my group published on when I was a professor. But we are not limited to my research. Where that's the beauty of the publicly available database that NIH and SF are, really taxpayers' money created in the past 30 years. We'll be able to, it's open access, right, to scientists and researchers and innovators like ourselves. So we can go into multiple repositories of data and processes, algorithm, and knowledge base to curate what is really meaningful for your particular cause. In our cases, what is the essential nutritional genomic panel that can help us to help individual have an informed decision-making process. So that's really what we're building, right? So GenoPalate today provide the most comprehensive, most sophisticated, created algorithm for personalized nutrition based on DNA. And tomorrow we will incorporate ongoing research in, potentially epigenomic, potentially behavior science, and metabolic medicine, whatnot, to really have a holistic view and programming to help each person drive their success in healthy eating.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. Now, those folks who have done testing like myself, is that going to be an add-on that we could add on to the testing that we already had, or will we have to do a new swab? How does that work?
Yeah, genes don't change over time. That's a benefit of doing once for a long time, unless there's, cancer happen. That's the only situation where your genetics change. But your interactions with the environment change. Your environment changes. So those are the things we may be able to capture by not going through our lab necessarily, but by asking some sensible questions and a survey that will go out to you, and then you provide the feedback, and then we make it a more intelligent, more personalized experience for you.
Okay, I see. Yeah, I had it in my mind that perhaps our DNA was being held somewhere, and perhaps you could add on to what had already been tested. Which brings me into another question, because I think a lot of people right now, with some of the controversy with DNA testing, once folks' labs or results are provided to them, what happens to the DNA that was used as the sample? Is it used up and discarded, or do you actually have somewhere where you're storing the DNA? Because I think a lot of people want to know about this kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a lab that will go through the QC and then extraction I talked about, and we do save a aliquot of leftover just in case the first run was not successful. Mm-hmm. Instead of going back to you and send another kit, we have a way to re-isolate the DNA and so on. It's more to help us to make it more efficient for that service we promised. But in the future, though, I do want to share with you as a exciting feature that we can offer folks that an option where if you want to your earlier point, to bank your biospecimen with us and with fully well-explained transparencies around how do we use that for. And the reason we want to bank it for you is potentially we can go back to that when another next-gen technology is available, for example, whole genome sequencing, right? That was not something the signals will be beyond what we capture with the microarray previously. Then we have your specimen ready to go. So that would be the possible future offer in terms of saving your specimen for your own use.
That's really cool. I will definitely be watching to see when that comes out, because I'm not one of the conspiracy theorists out there. I really don't care who has my DNA. I just want to use it to benefit my health and well-being. So that is cool.
We have a lot of people like you, and then there's some people still learning. I think that speaks to the importance of companies like ours need to do a better job of educating customers and be really transparent about how do we use your data, how do we use your biospecimen. And for us, we don't sell, we don't work with third parties. The only purpose of having anything at our bay is to better your experience, better the personalization. So it's of more value to each individual.
That's great. Thanks for letting us know that. I think a lot of people do have that question.
Great.
So let's take things towards the actual testing, because folks are probably like, all right, we got the background. I want to know what's being tested and what it looks like here. So As we head into that department, I want to ask one quick question, because my testing and my results showed very similar to what I actually experience with my body. And in particular, I do have some food sensitivities. I've taken the food sensitivity testing. And in this, I was looking at what foods, that I would be intolerant to. And of course, lactose intolerance is different than a true dairy sensitivity. However, I do believe that you could develop a sensitivity if you can't break down the lactose and the digestive lining has some irritation around that. And my lab showed that I was lactose intolerant. It also showed that I was sensitive to sodium, which is so true. And so I would love to get to know your opinion on genes playing into food sensitivities or food allergies. Is there a connection there, or is it more of, like I was thinking, environment and how much dosage of a certain food before the food that you might not digest well turns into more of a sensitivity because of the impact on the gut?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a very complex question, as you know, in your practice and research. I'm sure the allergy is mostly a endpoint outcome that we experience as a result of inflammation, right? It's an immune system response to protect us in the first place, but they don't recognize, oh, this is strawberry, this is something I want to eat, or peanut, right? It became they recognize them as an alien and they're trying to attack them, and at the same time make us upset, right? So that's really what it's about. That being said, it's less of there's some correlation, but it's not a high confidence correlation between allergies for foods versus genetic predisposition for certain foods. So they capture different things. And I will say that a lot of things that doesn't capture by the allergy food sensitivity blood test whatnot can be reviewed by certain genetic testing and vice versa, right? So I just want to differentiate those two and from the molecular biology side of it. So for us, for example, the lactose intolerant that you related to, I am from my Asian, I grew up in northern China. All my 3,000 years of ancestry, probably all living on rice. So we never developed, we have that what we call the wild type for that lactase gene. Because after weaning, meaning like 5 years or older, we used to have that, everybody has that genes because we need to lactate, we need to take advantage of the breast milk from our mothers naturally. But then we don't need it anymore. So our cells are very, very efficient on energy, just like turn on and off your light switch. So you switch it off. So to save energy of the cells, then we lose that ability of digest the sugar in milk. That's lactose. So everybody started with that ancestry. And then we migrated into different areas of the globe. Then 4 areas in about 10,000 to 7,000 years ago when the cattle farming started, Northern Europeans, Eastern Africa, Middle Eastern, and so on and so forth developed this mutation. So people having that mutation can take advantage of the 70% of more energy carried through by digesting the milk in adulthood. So that's really, sorry, it's a long story to your question, but that's really the basis of lactose intolerant sensitivity test by genetics. In other way, it's pretty sensitive to pick up the right signals. Obviously, pick up me, pick up yours, pick up my son's. His father also Asian. There's more than 80% of correlation between that result and then clinical test results. So those are kind of different, examples or uses of genetic tests versus other food sensitivity tests.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I mean, you're getting to the heart of whether it's an issue for you or not. And I love your explanation over time. I mean, that is great for folks to understand. I also like that you are looking at the HLA-DQ genetics and the HLA-DQA1 and 8 for the gluten sensitivity, because I think that a lot of people suspect that they are sensitive to gluten when in reality, it's not the gluten. It may be what they're eating with the gluten. It might be that it's a fried type of gluten-based item. Because you talk also about the genetics related to fats. So will you give us a little background on, I don't know how many people actually know about the gene for gluten and its implications in obesity. Can you talk a little bit about that?
I can. So in general, it's it captures the signals to reflect some correlations with symptoms from celiac disease patients. That's really this SNPs we call it, or variant picks up. So there's the people having this are potentially have those symptoms that is sensitive and to gluten containing food, but it's not how do I put it, a gluten sensitivity test for non-celiac disease symptoms, if that makes sense.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. That's good. Cause that was what I think a lot of people would be confused on there is it celiac, non-celiac? How does it play into metabolism and whatnot? So thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. So now let's talk about the carbohydrates and fats and proteins genetics, because this is one of the biggest areas that I go rounds with patients, because the keto diet is somewhat the diet du jour over the last probably 3 years or more. And I've tried the diet. I've had other patients try the diet and they don't feel so good, or they actually gain weight. And the reality of it is I think about how we digest food. I think about what kinds of food in terms of the keto diet. Are you eating a high fat, not so great plant-based fat? Like, is it high animal fat, etc.? But what I'm seeing here in terms of my genetics, which I would imagine that some folks might have similar genetics to myself, the GenoPalate is recommending that I eat higher carbohydrates and higher fiber in terms of my foods. Now, this is cool. Obviously, it doesn't mean go out and eat a whole bunch of, ding dongs, ho-hos, and junk food. It means more whole foods carbohydrates. Now, you were mentioning that your genetics had showed that you were more prevalent in terms of being able to digest higher fat foods, whereas mine showed that I am not recommended to eat fats. So I'm giving a summary just so folks can kind of see the variance in terms of genetics. Would you talk a little bit about these genotypes and how they play in to obesity and metabolism, and kind of the importance of knowing these genes and how, that can help someone prevent having issues down the road?
Yeah, sure. So the evidence we compiled was really interesting that, the generalized dietary trends tell us, there's certain arbitrary groups, right? High fat, low carb, and or in between, and so on. And nothing is really personalized in a way, taking into account all of these happening the same time in your body, right? That's really what's missing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just to before, GenoPalate or our similar options out there, there's no way to figure that out in a scientific way. So what we set out to do is looking at multiple signals conveyed by the nucleotide differences we alluded to. And then with our understanding of the genetic molecular biology behind each one, we put together a profiling algorithm to really understand for Jannine, okay, where is your potentially optimal distribution that each day or each meal you should be consuming for carbohydrates and fats and all these macros, right? And then same thing for the micronutrients as well, vitamins and minerals. So what we found is, interestingly, that, as you can imagine, it's a distribution for all of the above. It's never really just one type. It's really the reconciled distribution among 3 or 4 macros, right? So me is, higher protein, middle sugar, higher fiber, and so on and so forth. And yours, you just spoke to higher carb, higher fiber, and lower fat. Think about, one way of thinking that is, think about each of us are sensitive or intolerant to certain level of carbs or certain level of fats, right? So it's our job to find in that sweet spot So you are in the most protected optimal range of taking advantage of the energy and nutrients and fulfillment when add to your brain, but at the same time, don't take the tax from the fact that you cannot digest the metabolism that efficiently. I hope this make any sense.
No, it does. It does. Digestion's one thing, but in terms of the balance of things is a whole nother, which I think for a lot of folks just looking at this, sometimes I'll have patients who do the genetic testing and they take it for face value and don't take in the other factors in terms of they're eating really fast, they're not chewing their food, things of that nature. Like you mentioned, the environmental factors that could also be at play. But what I see is amazing with your testing is you take all of this and then you put it into what foods are optimal for you based on the genetic profile that comes back. So let's talk a little bit about that, because now I'm looking at my fruits, my vegetables, my leafy vegetables, herbs that are best for me, meats, seafoods, proteins, breads, starches, grains, pasta, etc. Nuts and seeds, fats and oils, legumes. Folks, I wanted to read all of that off just so that you can kind of hear, the whole, this is really extensive. And I love that it shows the certain fruits and vegetables. Now, you're taking it, and correct me if I'm incorrect on interpreting this, is we're taking the genes, compiling them together in their unique, what's been recommended for me. And now you're putting it into what vegetables and fruits are best for me, correct?
Yeah. Think about when we look at a fruit, let's say kiwi, right? It's no longer just it's beautiful, it's green, to our brain it means healthy if you like kiwi. But we look at that as a carrier of a special nutrients profile, the package of those nutrients at different levels. And then we run through our algorithm to rank each food items, any food, or beverages, to match that as what is better, or I think we categorize in great and good and best for you or for me, right? So kiwi maybe at rank, I don't know, top number 15 for you. I'm just as an example, and maybe it's 23 for me. Then it will make more of your recipes and solutions that we made out to you versus mine. So every single food items in our database were processed that way, and then were delivered to such that you don't need to care about all these details. But at the end of your the process, you look at you pull it up from, we have a mobile app now. You can pull up your results through your app, and then GenoPalate tell me what's the best salad for me, right? So you can pretty much nail down those ingredients, or we can make recipes for you. So that's the technology we also develop ourselves to match the vast majority, the data, the food database out there, and then the food solution you can buy at your store, and with your nutritional genomic and personalized nutrition profile we did for you.
That's really cool, because as far as I know, no one else in terms of genetic testing that I've done has hammered that down for me to that, these are the top fruits, these are the top vegetables, these are the top, meats, etc. for you. It's really cool, folks. I'm looking at my results right now, and I have my top ones, my go-tos that are gonna be, the most bang for my buck. Granted, I'm sure we have to also incorporate and maybe say this disclaimer that, of course, you can eat other things. It's just that these are the top ones based on your genetics.
Yeah, it's as we talk about, it's intelligent nutrition. It helps you have some references with highly scientific evidence and studies to help you make the better decisions on the spot.
And I think that is ultimately what a lot of people are looking for, taking nutrition, up-leveling it to intelligence, but like intelligent nutrition, but also data behind it going, this is what your genes are going to work better with compared to other foods. And I think there's so much information out there where folks are saying, my diet's best, this diet's best, that diet's best. This just takes it to a whole nother level. And I absolutely love it. I need to get some recipes just because I'd love to see what they look like and how they're put together. This is fabulous. You have a great product here. I am definitely recommending it to my patients, especially those folks who are wondering what to do with their nutrition. So let's talk a little bit, Sherry, about where folks can find you and where folks can get on a list or something of that nature so that they can find out when you might be adding more recipe, ordering to the program or whatnot. So GenoPalate.com, correct?
Yes, we have a pretty inclusive, informative platforms. Just go on to our website, GenoPalate.com. If you still need still have questions, and please reach out, and we love feedback. You can email us at hello@genopalate.com, and just refer to, if you have some question in general, they will be able to help you. If you have something for me, I'd love to have a conversation. Just refer to yours podcast, and then we'll make sure we get a feedback and answer those questions. And I believe if you subscribe to our email list, if you're not ready to purchase or join, just want to watch out what's the coolest thing coming up from GenoPalate, just subscribe to our email list, and we'll periodically we'll inform you what's happening in the next quarter.
Wow. I will have all of this information, folks, on my website at drjkrauseND.com under podcast, or you can go straight to the healthfixpodcast.com. I have everybody's information in my show notes, so if you didn't have a chance to write it down, we will have it there for you. Sherry, thank you so much for sharing all of this great information. I really hope that folks will take a look at this and see it as a great option for narrowing down their questions about their body and what they truly need to eat.
Thank you so much for Jannine, for this opportunity. It's my pleasure talking to you and talk about healthy eating using genomics.
Hey, health junkies, Dr. Jannine Krause here. I hope you enjoyed my podcast. Guess what? I have a Facebook group. It's called Anti-Aging Health Tips with Dr. Jannine Krause. So if you want a little bit more of the Health Fix podcast, head over to my Facebook group and let's chat. Now, I'm also offering a health transformation and restoration program. It's a one-on-one with me. And it's for folks who are sick and tired of going to doc after doc and health coach after health coach and not seeing the results that they want and deserve. In my program, I'm working with folks with transformation. So this isn't just a light program. This is a big deal. I'm going to change how you think about your health and your life kind of program. And I'm super excited to offer it to folks. And if you are at all interested, we should talk. I'm offering 45 minutes free with me chatting to see if and how I can help you. And you can get all the details over at my website, drjkrauseND.com. All right. You've survived another episode of The Health Fix. I'm your host, Dr. Jannine Krause. Have a great day, whatever you're doing. Subscribe, rate, and share info.